What is going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Six Man Show. It is June 29th, 2020. I'm back with Luke Sylvia. Luke, what it do?
Man, it's good, and it's real good because it's real weird because we got basketball coming back in about a month, and we got people peeing in Joe Ingles' lawn. So
People don't care about coronavirus, Luke.
they don't.
They don't want to wear their mask. They're peeing on people's lawns.
And I'm glad to say this is the first piece of news that I'm going to talk about today. Joe Ingles tweeted and said, "To the young skateboarding teenager that peed on our driveway/garden, just a heads up, but our security cameras see everything," in all caps, face and every other small detail.
Oh, my God.
Woo!
Oh, my God. Okay, this is what I want to know. Like, who just whips it out and pees on somebody's front lawn? Like,
Well,
if you're gonna do anything, you walk around to like the side of the house and like you whiz on the fence. You don't just whip it out like for the mailman to see it. What if his kids would have been outside?
This kid just like kicking up his skateboard and being like, "Yep, I'm gonna pee here."
Yeah,
and it's just one of those things.
That.
It's kind of like someone, that person that tried to bash J.R. Smith's car. It's like wrong place, wrong time, wrong person. You don't want to try to smash an NBA player's car, and you don't want to pee on an NBA player's lawn when he's got security cameras that are probably high definition. You know what I'm saying?
J.R. Smith thing was like just really bad luck. You know what I mean? Like this kid just you deserve everything that's coming to you.
Oh,
You're just whizzing on people's front lawns and whatnot. I don't condone. I think the J.R. situation, someone was trying to. It was during like a lot of the riots and everything. Someone was trying to smash his car. Obviously, I don't condone that either. But
they both had it coming for them.
It's 2020. Like, why are we peeing on people's lawns?
Yeah, it's just take a quick break from skateboarding. You know.
So something else that's kind of weird, Luke. This is going to be one of the first episodes of the podcast that you've been on that we're going to actually like talk basketball, like analyze what we think is going to happen.
I didn't think that this is how the podcast stuff was going to start. The fact that I talked to an NBA player, Jonathan Isaac, before I talked basketball really on this podcast, like in terms of very much Magic basketball, right? So, yeah, it's definitely been a very odd start. I think we're coming on like month 3 of being on the podcast, so it's been a wild ride already, Jonathan. So I'm ready to finally get to talk basketball. And before we jump into the schedule and all that stuff, there's been some cool news that I think I screenshot and sent to you yesterday. That Shams tweeted out that the NBA and NBPA are planning to allow players to replace the last name on their jersey with statements on social justice. So really cool. But also, these players are going to be able to, soccer did a similar thing. I believe it was in the Bundesliga. It could have been the Premier League, but I think it was Bundesliga. But they did, back of their jerseys said Black Lives Matter, everyone on the field. So that was cool. I expect that to be the case with a lot of players' jerseys coming this summer. But, you had some funny memes, Jonathan, that came out of this whole thing. I believe I also sent you that pertaining to our good friend J.R. Smith. J.R. Smith just coming up a lot tonight,
right?
But and we're only like 5 minutes in. But J.R. Smith, it said J.R. Smith when it's the meme of him looking really confused. As we all know, J.R. Smith got the score wrong, didn't know what it was in the playoffs with LeBron in Cleveland. Says, J.R. Smith looking really confused when the box score says LeBron James had 0 points, but Black Lives Matter had 45.
Right.
So I love the memes. I think J.R. Smith is a living meme and someone we might get to see play again at Disney.
Yeah, I'm definitely. It'll be really cool to see. J.R. Smith is one of those names. Is it official with the Lakers? I know that there had been talks of that. Everyone, the memes, him
just
and
Dion
Waiters, being on the same team and everything like that. So it'll be really interesting to see. I definitely like the idea of, allowing the players to, promote their messages, via the names, on the back of the jerseys. But I definitely think that's just going to be a small part of, them trying to progress that movement at, the bubble in Orlando. So it'll be really cool to see, man. I'm excited. since the last time that we've talked to everybody, the schedules have been released. The NBA and the NBA Players Association have officially come to an agreement to return. So we are back. We are officially back at this point. The season is returning Thursday, July 30th, 6:30 p.m. on TNT. It's going to be the Jazz versus the New Orleans Hornets. So
we're only a month and 2 days away, Jonathan.
I can't tell you how excited I am. Just as we were prepping for the podcast, and as I was doing a little bit of research, before the show, just like thinking, like, man, we're actually prepping to start talking about basketball. It's just like a weird feeling. Before you came onto the show, this is what I would do every single Sunday. I'd wake up in the morning, go to church, come home, turn football on. And then I would just sit here and go over, every detail from the last week of games for the Orlando Magic and kind of put together, what I was going to talk about on the show. And it felt good to be able to do that again, man. All the stuff that's been going on the last few months.
Does this fall into the category of you never know what you got till it's gone?
I mean, not necessarily, because I've always loved doing this. You know what I mean? I definitely think maybe I took it a little bit for granted. But no, I've always had fun, doing this and prepping.
Not necessarily the prepping. I just meant basketball, from a fan aspect. This has been the most eye-opening thing of how just like sports unites people, sports distracts people, and really actually can lift stress off of people. That if they have a bad day at work, it doesn't matter as long as their team is playing that night.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if I had a crappy day at work, I come down, come into the living room, turn the game on, and as soon as I hear David Steele's voice, it was just like that was all gone, and now I'm just focused on Magic basketball.
Locked in, which is awesome. And, Jonathan, they released the schedule, so what game are you most looking forward to? I know I posed that through our Twitter page and got a lot of Toronto Raptors, myself included, but is there a game on the schedule that you're more hyped than others for?
I'm a sucker for the cliche, man. I'm just going to be happy to be back. Brooklyn, that first game, July 31st. Obviously, the playoff implications of that are huge. We're going to start right off with a bang with our destiny in our own hands. If we beat Brooklyn that game, then we're in the 7th seed. That's where we want to be. That's what we've talked about. But it's mostly just because it's going to be the first Magic basketball game that we've had in more than 4 months. So Brooklyn is definitely going to be really excited. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited about every single one of these games. I think the cool thing about this, but it's also a little bit scary, is that every team that is going to be in Orlando is vying for a playoff spot. You could throw, a few names out there that really aren't. When we talk about Phoenix, we talk about Washington, but all the teams on the Magic schedule, they all feel like they have a legitimate shot. We're talking about Brooklyn, Sacramento, New Orleans, a few of the teams out west. We'll talk more about the Eastern Conference teams, in a moment. But yeah, man, I'm just really excited to have basketball back. Every single one of these games, I feel like the Magic do have a chance to win. They're all super important, but they're all against quality opponents with, big names. So
yeah, you're going to see a lot of teams with a really bad record during these 8 games because those 8 teams that aren't there, the ones that you typically get to beat up on all year, aren't going to be there. There's no cushion games. It's all just teams trying to make the playoffs. I think we're going to see playoff intensity come very early on in this 8-game regular season resumption of the league.
Right.
I think you're going to see it from game 1. You've got guys that haven't gotten to play on an NBA atmosphere type court in 3 months.
Right.
So that atmosphere is going to be insane. Obviously, there's going to be no fans. But the crazy thing is, even without fans, I still think the atmosphere will be very intense. I think it'll be handshakes at the beginning of the game and then head down, let's make the playoffs.
Oh, facts. Like Russell Westbrook has said, when we step in between those lines, you're an enemy. I think Kobe Bryant said that a few times. And I definitely think all of these games are going to be playoff intensity. You know what I mean? I don't think that from these 8 regular season games to the first round of the quote-unquote playoffs, we're going to see that much of an uptick. Maybe once we get into like the semifinals and the finals, obviously. But yeah, man, it's going to be really cool. So really quickly, if anybody is just now coming to the show, if you haven't been listening for the past few months, if a lot of this is news to you, if you didn't even know the NBA was coming back, this is essentially how it's going to work. So each team, so there's been 9 Eastern Conference teams that have been invited to Orlando. So Milwaukee, Toronto, Boston, Miami, Indiana, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Orlando, the 8 teams that were set to be in playoff position, but then also the Washington Wizards. And then same thing with the Western Conference teams. I think it's with the addition of the Pelicans, the Trailblazers, the Spurs, and the Suns, if I'm not mistaken. The Kings, excuse me. So basically what's going to happen is each team is going to have 8 regular season games. Obviously, you can only play against teams that are inside of the bubble. But at the end of those 8 games, if the 9th seed is 4 games or less behind of the 8th seed, then those two teams will play in essentially like kind of a play-in tournament, if you will. If the 9th seed wins the first game, they play a second game. If the 9th seed wins both of those games, the 9th seed becomes the 8th seed. The 8th seed goes home. That first game, if the 9th seed wins, they play the second game. The 8th seed wins, it's over. The 8th seed wins the first game, it's also over. So basically when it comes to the Orlando Magic, the 2 teams we're really going to be focusing on today outside of the Magic are going to be Brooklyn, who the Magic right now sit half game behind in the Eastern Conference, and then Washington, who is 5.5 games behind the Orlando Magic for that 8th spot.
Yeah, there's a lot to look at here, Jonathan. I think this was obviously the next thing we were looking at was what are these regular season games going to look like? Who are we going to play? And I think this was what ended up happening was kind of what everybody thought and what the rumor was, if I'm not mistaken. But that, the next 8 games will just be against the opponents that are at Disney, as they would appear on your regular season schedule. So it eliminated, like I said, those really bad teams. But Jonathan, I think the biggest, the most exciting thing here is that we can finally make predictions about the season's resumption. We can place a W or an L next to every game on the schedule. And, I've got to say, Jonathan, I think out of the Nets, Magic, and Wizards, the Magic got the best schedule. And by best, I mean not as many tough opponents. You don't see the Bucks. You don't see the Clippers. You don't see the Lakers. So it is pretty good news for the Magic.
Well, the Magic, out of, basically every team in the NBA outside of maybe New Orleans, I believe, had the easiest schedule, had the regular season played out the way that it was supposed to. So that's pretty fitting, right? So,
right.
But basically what Luke and I wanted to do is we're going to take a look at Washington's schedule. We're going to take a look at Brooklyn's schedule, at Orlando's schedule, of course, see how we, see that playing out. Does Washington have a realistic chance at making the playoffs? Luke will be able to answer that for us in just a moment, actually. He's already kind of shared his thoughts with me, so we'll discuss that. Then we'll look at Brooklyn's schedule, who obviously is Orlando's. It's the team that they're chasing. Like I mentioned a moment ago, if that first game, July 31st, if the Magic win that game, they're already the 7th seed. So that's how close that playoff race is going to be. And then obviously we'll take a look at the Magic and see how we think all that's going to shake out. So let's start there, Luke. Let's talk about Washington. Let's talk about Washington's schedule and what do you predict them going over those 8 games?
You were talking about it with me and you were trying to guess. You said at best you'd think the Wizards are going to win 2 games, like 2-6, to which I chuckled. And you said 1-7. I chuckled again. And you said, no way, 0-8. Dude, it is insane. And even by Vegas standards, like the betting lines have already been released for the first 3 days of games, roughly. Some teams don't have lines yet, but I'm sure that'll happen pretty quickly. But all that to say, the Wizards' first game is seemingly their easiest, and they are 3-point underdogs. Obviously, news came out that Bertans will not be there. It'll be the Bradley Beal show, as is usually the case, but Beal has had some games this year that he is thankful that Bertans was on the court with him because he was able to they were able to combine for a high point total and win those games. He's not going to have Bertans to lean on. He is not there. He said he is not going. He doesn't think it's safe. There's some beliefs about why he's doing that. But it is a lot of contractual things, I think, is the reason he's not going. So
trying to secure the bag. Can't be mad at him for that,
Right, of course. Their first game against the Suns, 3-point dogs. No, I'm giving them an L. That's their most winnable game, but I don't think they're winning that. You go down and look at the rest of their schedule. When I say it doesn't get easier, it literally doesn't get easier than playing the worst team in Orlando on July 31st. It's the Suns, then you have the Nets, the Pacers, the Sixers, the Pelicans, the Thunder, the Bucks, and the Celtics. So when you look at that, Jonathan, I don't know about you, but I don't see a win. I'm not saying they're not going to win a game, but I think that they could steal 1 or 2 games and go 1-7, 2-6. But when it comes to what is winnable, the Wizards are not going to see a very winnable game past those Suns and Nets games, and even then I don't give them much of a shot.
So this is where I'm going to counter. So definitely I would say Phoenix obviously is going to be their most winnable game. Washington has a long shot, but I would say that Phoenix has the longest of long shots. It's almost like mathematically impossible for the Phoenix Suns to make the playoffs in this these circumstances and the way this is playing out.
I'm fairly certain that the Phoenix Suns have to go 7-1 or 8-0 and hope that other teams near them go 0-8, 1-7. That is really the only way this is mathematically possible.
And it's just not going to happen, right? So no. I would say that Phoenix might probably be the least motivated team out of any team in Orlando to be there. So I could definitely see them just kind of phoning in 8 games, going 2-6 or 1-7 as well. I haven't had a chance to look at Phoenix's schedule, but that's definitely the most winnable game on Washington's schedule. As you go down the list, though, then we start talking about Brooklyn, Indiana, Philadelphia, New Orleans, Oklahoma City. Now, this is where I think things are going to take a turn. So when we look at these last 2 games, Milwaukee and Boston, depending on Milwaukee, by that time, I can guarantee you they will be resting Giannis, Chris Middleton, maybe even Eric Bledsoe. Like, I would be shocked if Giannis was playing that game, right? They're going to have the 1 seed locked up. Washington might still have a reason to play. Milwaukee definitely will not. Now, Boston, it's a little trickier because who knows how the playoff race is going to play. They might really need that game. I don't think they'll be so far ahead that they'll be like, okay, we're good with this. They might just be so far behind at that point that they're like, okay, we can't make it up to be the 2nd seed or to be the 3rd seed or whatever is going to happen. Jason Tatum was one of those players that was kind of questioning, should we do this? I'm coming up on what's going to be a max extension possibly. And then you guys have other guys with, injury history like a Gordon Hayward. So maybe, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kemba, Gordon Hayward could be guys that we see sit out of this thing. When we come down the last few games of this regular season, these rosters are going to be extended a little bit to make room for substitutions if a player's injured or gets coronavirus because, they're in that bubble. So if Washington's going to win any games, in my opinion, it's going to have to be that first game against Phoenix, and then they have to pray that Milwaukee or Boston is going to be sitting out. But even 3 games, Luke, I'm not going to try to sit here and do the math off the top of my head, as we both know. And as we learned yesterday, both of our math is absolute garbage.
Not great.
So, they would need the Magic to just completely fall apart, winning those 3 games to even have a chance at that play-in game. So I just I don't see it happening.
They'd have to do, I think, one game better. Or not one game. They'd have to do like a lot of games better than the Magic to even
it's
get.
It's not going to happen
to sniff it, and it's not going to happen. It would it's kind of like Phoenix's scenario where Phoenix needs teams above them to go 1-7, 0-8. Wizards being 5.5 games back, they need that. They need the Magic to do really poorly. Granted, whether it's the Nets or the Magic, if they're 4 games or better from being back from those, the 8 and 7 spot or the 8 spot, then they can get that kind of tiebreaker type series. But it would take a lot of mediocrity and being below average from the Magic or the Nets for the Wizards to even be 4 games back. I think at this point the Wizards will end up being about 8 games back from the 8 spot after this is all said and done.
So you're going with 0-8.
I'm going with 0-8. Yeah.
I'm gonna say they find a way to go 1-7. Either whether it be Phoenix, Milwaukee, or Boston. Milwaukee and Boston running with a skeleton crew most nights is still going to be better than the Wizards team that they're going to be putting on the floor. So
yeah, not outlandish to think that they could steal a couple games,
right.
Even after losing to Phoenix maybe first game. But yeah, I mean, the Wizards have their work cut out for them, and I'm sure that there's some games they can look back during the regular season and say, man, we should have had that one.
All right, so let's pivot. Let's take a look at Brooklyn. So Brooklyn, when the season was suspended, they were 30 wins, 34 losses. When you compare that to the Magic's 30 games, 35 losses. So the Magic have played one more game, and they have one more loss than the Brooklyn Nets. So that's where you get that half game back. So now we're going to take a look at Brooklyn's schedule. Luke, you want to break that down for us?
Yeah, man. So it starts in Orlando. So this will give you a glimpse into kind of where my head's at.
I mean, it all starts in Orlando. Am I right?
Well, okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
The jokes start. Yep. But they play the Magic first. So obviously that means Magic play the Nets first, July 31st. It'll be a highly anticipated game for both teams, being what the standings are. It is the Magic's chance to hop to the 7 seed and hopefully never look back. So looking at that game, I just think that the Magic are the better team, specifically because the Nets don't have Kyrie and KD. Obviously, that's a whole different story if they are both healthy. But with Kyrie being out, who knows if Kyrie's going to even travel there at this point. I'm interested to see what he decides to do, since he was going to, and then he kind of backtracked there. Regardless, I have the Magic winning that game. Thus, the Nets will I have them losing that game. So the Nets starting the season 0-1, right? And then you look at their schedule. They've got Wizards, Bucks, Celtics, Kings, Clippers, Magic again, and Blazers. I've got the Nets going 2-6. I've got them, losing to us, beating the Wizards, losing to the Bucks, losing to the Celtics, beating the Kings, losing the Clippers. I've got them losing to Orlando again and losing to the Blazers to end that 8-game regular season. So I've got them going with a projected record of 2-6, which would put them at 32-40.
Yeah, I definitely I think my feelings are right in line with yours. I guess just for the sake of debate, at this point. We could argue that Portland might be another team at the end of this that, is just looking to kind of mail it in, not get anybody hurt. If they're too far back, I could see them sitting Dame, sitting C.J. McCollum, which might make that a more winnable game for the Brooklyn Nets. When you look at the L.A. Clippers, same thing. Right now they're in the 2nd seed. I don't know exactly how far back they are of the Lakers if you want to take a moment to look that up. But let's say they're, with 3 games to go.
Who are you asking about?
How far back the Clippers are of the Lakers? Let's say, 3 games to go. Let's say they're 4 games back. They might just, decide to, rest Kawhi and Paul George. And, maybe at that point, Brooklyn's able to steal another game there. So
the Clippers have their work cut out for them if they want the 1 seed in the West. They are 5.5 back from the Lakers.
Yeah, so that just kind of feeds into what I'm saying. Then at that point, the Clippers are probably better served. Injury-prone guys, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, they're at that point they might just be better served to kind of mail it in. And but again, skeleton crew of the Clippers is probably still better to beat the Nets.
And here's the thing, though the Clippers will be probably out of reach of that 1 spot going into this, which makes the storylines even more exciting, is that everything else in the West is pretty tightly contested. The 2 and 3 seed, the Clippers and the Nuggets, there is a 1.5 game difference between them. So near the end of the year, or the end of those regular season games, you could see the Clippers still putting everybody out on the court, because they would rather
trying to keep the 2nd seed.
Yeah, they would rather play the Mavs than the Rockets, and obviously both of those teams are going to be unreal matchups regardless. So that'll be interesting. But yeah, you do have those games where you can kind of look and kind of assume where those teams will be at, what the race will look like. And Jonathan, we've kind of planned for a couple weeks down the road, getting into the Western Conference and mapping out those games and doing a deep dive into that after, next week, probably going into the upper tier of the Eastern Conference regular season games.
So yeah, you went 2-6. I think I'll go 3-5. I think they'll lose, that first game against Orlando, win the second game against Washington. Definitely losses against Milwaukee, Boston. Pick the win up against Sacramento, lose to the Clippers and Orlando, and then maybe they'll beat Portland. That last game. I just don't think Portland is going to be able to make up enough ground, but they might be playing for that play-in game. So who really knows?
And the thing is, people are probably going to hear this and be like, "Oh, Luke and Jonathan predicting such terrible records for the Wizards and Nets, like they're being a little bit of homers." Here's something you guys should know about me, because we haven't gotten to talk much Magic basketball or any basketball really over these past 3 months. Besides reflecting on the past, I'm quite the pessimist.
No.
When it comes to
not you.
When it comes to the Magic and the NBA, and obviously I'd like to say I'm a realist, but that's really just a pessimist. That's all that is. But usually I err on the side of, hey, let's not get our hopes up. These are the records, and normally I would probably predict better games. But like we've touched on multiple times already, they're not going to be very bad teams in these games, and the Magic just happen to have the easier regular season schedule, and that's because we had such a tough gauntlet before this. So it kind of pays off for the Magic here, and it's hopefully going to pay huge dividends and end with the Magic getting the 7th seed. So yeah, I think that would put the Nets at 32-40. And then the Wizards 24-48 with how far we've gotten right now before going into the Orlando schedule.
Well, as a lot of our listeners already know, I'm kind of the opposite of that. I'm the optimist. I think everything's going to go well. I get all my hopes up, and then when things go bad, I get crushed by the Magic every single time. As the old cliche goes, I hope the Magic are at my funeral so they can lower me into the grave and let me down one last time, as the saying goes. So, but Luke, it has been 3 months, a little bit more than that, I think, since you've been on the podcast.
Yeah.
The moment that everyone has been waiting for. Let's talk some Orlando Magic basketball.
Man, it's all led to this moment, and I am probably more excited than everybody else to finally talk about it. So I'm ready to get into it, Jonathan. You look at this schedule, like I said, it's just easier. That's what it boils down to, and that fits and bodes well for the Magic. You start the year off with the Nets. Like I said, I'm counting that as a W. Vegas odds came out.
Before we do this, give me just your flat record prediction. I'll give you mine. Yeah. Let's do this. We'll say it on 3, okay. and then we can break it down. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 4.
4-4.
Perfect.
Great. I'm glad we agree.
I'm glad we agree as well. I think it fits both sides. We're going to lose some. We're going to win some. Some pessimism. There's some optimism there. So break it down for us.
Yeah, of course, the optimistic side comes from the schedule just being easy. Right. Pessimistic side being you still got some tough opponents. You've got the Nets, which, like I've touched on already, the odds have come out. The Magic will be a 1-point favorite as of now. On Sunday, June 28th, the Magic are 1-point favorites in that first game back against the Nets. So I'm counting that as a W, as I already shared with you when we went over the Nets schedule. You've got then the Kings, Pacers, Raptors, Sixers on TNT, Boston, Nets, and Pelicans. So for me, Jonathan, I've got a win against the Kings, a loss against the Pacers, loss against the Raptors, loss against the Sixers. So I expect a little skid here, and then a loss against Boston. So you start the regular season with the resumption of the regular season with 2 wins. You have a 4-game skid, 2 more wins, and that's kind of start strong, finish strong. A little rocky in the middle. So
that's exactly what I mean, I don't know how much there is for us to talk about this here, because that's exactly my thoughts. You beat Brooklyn, you beat Sacramento. It gets rough. Indiana, Toronto, Philadelphia, Boston. But then we've seen this team, when they need to win games in the past, they can win games. So you beat Brooklyn, and then that final game of the regular season, you beat the Pelicans, and you make the playoffs and all that good stuff.
And listen, I think the thing to note is just the projected record by you and me being 4-4. I don't want people to look into necessarily the wins and losses that we've got. It's mainly just to show you guys how easy or hard team schedules are by kind of putting a win or a loss next to those team names, because if it could go totally different, Jonathan. Like you said, the Magic are just kind of unpredictable and will kind of just do whatever and step up to the moment, play down to competition. We've seen that who knows how many times as Magic fans. So who knows? Maybe it starts with a loss to the Nets. Maybe you lose to the Kings, and then you beat the Pacers, Raptors. Maybe you lose the Sixers, Boston, and you beat the Nets and the Pelicans. So there's a lot of different ways to get a lot of different records here, Jonathan. So I think that it'll be a fun 8 games for us. It'll probably be filled with really high highs, being if we do win those first 2 games, which would put us against above the Nets even more so. And then you've got some low lows if you do have that 4-game skid smack in the middle. You lose on national television. So there's a lot of ways this could go.
Yeah, man, I'm just honestly, like, we could sit here and talk about the games and everything like that, but the reality is, we haven't seen this team play in 3 months. We haven't seen any of these teams play in 3 months. I think that's kind of a factor that we really haven't talked about, is the fact that this is just going to be like the weirdest of like weird circumstances as you could possibly dream of. Like, I remember the night of the Utah Jazz and Oklahoma City Thunder game, watching the game on my laptop in bed with my wife. And I'm like, what is going on here? She kind of rolls over and it's like, what are you talking about? And I explain to her what's going on. And we just look at each other. We're like, they're not going to cancel the NBA. That would be insane. Sure enough, that night they canceled the NBA.
Do you remember how funny it was to think that like the NBA temporarily suspended the league for 2 weeks, and here we are 3 months later.
Oh yeah,
still no
I've
basketball.
said that a bunch of times. Absolutely.
It's just if only we knew then what we know now.
Well, the craziest thing to me is still, like, the Rudy Gobert thing happens with him, coughing on the microphones and everything like that. And then it's like the next day or like the 2 days later, you get this update from ESPN. Rudy Gobert, is like game time decision due to illness. And at that second, all the coronavirus memes start on Twitter. And you're like,
yeah,
okay, like it's whatever, because at that point, admittedly, everybody still thought COVID-19 was a joke, myself included. And you were just like, all right, it's funny, but like there's no way that it's coronavirus, right? Like, there's no way that it's coronavirus. And then all of this stuff happens, and we're just all looking around like, bro, it's coronavirus. And then the news officially comes out, and it's like, what are the odds that the one guy that is acting like a fool with the media becomes the first guy with coronavirus in the NBA? It's just insane. But I say all of that just to say we have no idea what's going to happen. Like, there's going to be a team, like we talked about the Suns, starting the season like 10-5 or something like that. We're like second or third in the West. It was crazy, right? I really feel like 2 months from now, we're going to be sitting here like, man, I can't believe Portland went like 8-0.
Yeah, and I can't believe the Orlando Magic won the NBA Finals.
No, I will be able to believe that. No, you guys, they will have to lower me into my grave because I would have had a heart attack and died if that happens, especially this season.
Yeah, 2020 has just taught me I know nothing. That's it. That's my 3 words to sum up 2020. I know nothing. So
true.
And that's probably what's going to happen after, the Wizards go 8-0, the Magic go 0-8, and the Nets go, 7-1. So that's it is what it is.
Don't even say that. We're going to delete that from the podcast so that it's not out in the universe.
Listen, at least people think I don't think that's going to happen. That's the opposite. And I mean, if you look at the predicted standings after all this is said and done, from my perspective, and it wouldn't look too different for you, but the Magic being 2.5 games up on the Nets, finishing the year 34-39, and then you've got the Wizards who, God bless them. I think they're going to be 8 games back from that 8th spot, maybe 7 if they're lucky. So who knows? And that's with the Nets going 2-6.
Well, I know next week, we said we're going to jump into some of the upper echelon Eastern Conference teams and kind of see what we think, see how all that is going to shake out. But right now, you're looking at Milwaukee, who are 6.5 games up on Toronto. So if Milwaukee goes 2-8, like if Milwaukee wins their first 2 games, they can all just say, hey, we're just going to forfeit every game for the rest of the season, rest our guys, and we'll still be the first seed. So, like, Milwaukee is the number 1 seed. That's what we're looking at. But really, as it pertains to the Magic, hopefully getting that 7th seed, we'll be playing against the 2nd seed. So it's Toronto and Boston. Toronto is 3 games up on Boston, so it's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes out. A lot of implications. You and I have briefly talked about, which matchup we would prefer on the podcast when we had Drew Gooden on a few months ago. Shameless plug, if you guys haven't checked out that episode, go back and listen. Check it out on YouTube.
Nothing's changed in the NBA since that interview,
yeah,
so
exactly.
It's all still accurate.
It's evergreen right now.
Absolutely.
But yeah, man, we'll talk more about that next week, but it's going to be really interesting to see kind of how all that plays out.
And also, Jonathan, I just want to jump in here. I just got a notification on my phone that says that, I don't know if you saw this, maybe I'm late to this, but Hoops Hype reported that for a quote from Gobert that says, "The taste has returned, but the smell is still not 100%. I can smell the smells, but not from afar. I spoke to specialists who told me that it could take up to a year to regain this." So these are some lasting effects 3 months after Gobert's, tested positive for COVID. He's still kind of struggling. And
so we're talking like 2.5 months probably since he's been like over it.
Right. And he's still experiencing, smells. But he said that smell is an issue with smelling, but he said it's just not 100% that he can smell things, but just not from afar. So, he probably wouldn't be able to step into a house if there's chocolate chip cookies, cooking, baking, and smell those, which, that is unfortunate. I feel for him.
I would agree with that. I mean, oatmeal raisin is good too, but
that's
you want the
disgusting.
chocolate chip
Don't
cookie.
even talk about oatmeal raisin.
Okay, well, this is Luke and I have our own personal issues. We're not going to get into this on the podcast.
You know what, Jonathan? I'm just happy that I have, my wife fully is on board with my opinion. Yours is on board with yours.
What is marriage for?
Exactly. What's marriage for if
else.
It's not to have the same opinion on chocolate chips and oatmeal raisin?
You have obscure opinions on things. If your spouse is down to ride with you, you don't need anything else.
Right. For better or for worse,
Exactly. Sickness and health, chocolate chip, oatmeal raisin. So
that's precisely.
But I wanted to take a moment, pulled up some injury reports here on the Orlando Magic opponents, and just kind of, I don't know if you've had a chance to go through these yet, Luke, but just want to kind of read through this and see if any of your opinions change on how those teams are going to perform or the Magic's chances against them. So looking at Brooklyn, Wilson Chandler, I actually didn't know this, but he has decided not to participate in Orlando. He's going to stay back with his family during the bubble, which is completely understandable. Nicholas Claxton, shoulder injury, he's out for the season. We know Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, respectively with shoulder and Achilles injuries, are out for the season. Joe Harris and Garrett Temple, as of June 4th, had some type of ankle injuries. Now that might be talking about, back, during the regular season. I don't know if they've hurt their ankles recently, but right now it says game time decision. So I would expect to see Joe Harris and Garrett Temple for the Nets. Looking at Sacramento, Jabari Parker, Alex Len, and Buddy Hield, they all tested positive for coronavirus a few weeks back. Justin James, he has a kneecap injury. He's expected to be out until at least July 31st. Marvin Bagley is expected to be out until at least July 31st, still with that foot issue that he's had for quite a while now. So that actually, I feel a little bit worse about Sacramento. I thought Bagley would be healthy by now, but apparently not.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things looking at this injury report. I don't think it's uncommon for even people who consider themselves NBA experts to forget who was injured when the season ended.
I mean, Evan Fournier was out with the UCL sprain of his elbow. I've got to think that's fine by now. But we went on that 4-game winning streak where the offense was going through the roof and everybody was blaming Evan Fournier.
It's true. That did happen. And you look at some of these other teams, not necessarily a Magic opponent, but the Pelicans, JJ Redick is expected to be out until at least July 31st. I fully expect him to be playing. He had a hamstring injury, but he should be all right. Nickeil Alexander-Walker had a wrist injury, game time decision. As we know, Darius Miller out for the year. But I wanted to kind of highlight something that I was just kind of, I don't know about you, Jonathan, but my search history is full of basketball stats and, JJ Redick stats, whatever.
That's all I do.
Specifically Basketball Reference, yeah. But I looked at, JJ Redick and looking at, what would it look like if JJ missed a game or two. Obviously, this year he's averaging about 15 a game, but and shooting 90% from free throw. But what's funny is he shoots 45.2% from three and shoots 45% from the field. So JJ Redick has a better 3-point percentage than field goal percentage. That's just a fun fact for you.
I mean, if I would expect that from anyone, I think it would be JJ Redick, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, no, it's very, very true. And as we talked about last week, JJ Redick on the Bill Simmons podcast was pretty insightful and kind of talking about how he feels better than he has before. So that kind of tells me I doubt he misses any games. He'll be fine. He's been working out. He's back.
Yeah. And then looking at Indiana, as a lot of people know, Malcolm Brogdon, he was recently diagnosed with coronavirus, so he is now listed as a game time decision. I would think a month from now, hopefully, he'll be good to go and ready to go. Victor Oladipo, who ruptured his quad last January, I think it was, he's listed as a game time decision. He was kind of just starting to ramp it back up before coronavirus came and canceled the season. So I know they're going to be really, careful with him. He's obviously their best player and the future of that team. And then Jeremy Lamb, who tore his ACL, he's out for the rest of the season also. Looking at Orlando, it's really just Jonathan Isaac and Al-Farouq Aminu. On the injury report here as of June 9th, they are expected to be out until at least December 1st, which is kind of the fluid starting point for next season right now. So that's kind of all signs pointing to the fact that those guys probably won't be back during this season, which really sucks.
Yep, but it's obviously we're quite a few months away from next season, but it still gives Magic fans something to be excited about that J.I. would be back for the start of next season, and get to see what that young core continues to improve and look like. It'll be good experience to being put in such a weird position for guys like Markelle Fultz this year, to end the year, and it'll be interesting to see how teams respond, and see kind of it'll feel like it's a pickup game almost. We've seen so much footage of indoor pickup games for NBA players during the offseason. That's what NBA players have equated this to. They said it's going to feel like just intense pickup games. And obviously with your guys that you play 82 games with every year, plus playoffs. So it'll be a fun 8 games to resume the regular season. And I'm sure the NBA playoffs will not disappoint despite the scenario and situation being so weird.
Well, you brought up Markelle Fultz, and we talked about being an optimist and everything like that. So really what I'm hoping and praying is that during this entire time, Markelle Fultz had some more time to hopefully rehab and heal that shoulder. I'm hoping that Markelle Fultz is just going to come back completely healed, shooting about 37% from the 3-point line, and we're going to have a future perennial all-star and possibly second, third team All-NBA on our hands with Markelle Fultz. So that's just me being optimistic. We'll see.
That would be nice. And Jonathan, something I'd like to backtrack and look at is looking at our projected standings. Roughly the Nets would be 1.5 to 2.5 games back, depending on whose projection you look at between yours and mine. And the Nets being 2.5 games back, that there is a scenario, Jonathan, where the Nets and the Magic have, even more closely similar records, and you're looking at a 1-game differential. Do you think there's any, do you think that it's a greater chance that the Magic just are, 2.5 games up on the Nets to end the year, we're fine sitting pretty at the 7th spot? Or do you think that, come that final stretch, especially if we do have that 4-game skid, and the Nets kind of have that schedule where it's just, they got the Kings sandwiched between the Celtics and Clippers, so a game there, the Blazers to end the year. We could be sweating at the end of the regular season, Jonathan.
Well, I definitely think, as far as the Magic are concerned, I definitely think that it's going to come down to that second game against Brooklyn. What is that going to be? August 11th. I think the Magic are going to be put in a position where if they win that game, they're the 7th seed. Even if they lose to the Pelicans, it wouldn't matter basically. I think the Magic are going to put themselves in a position to be able to do that. But yeah, those last 3 games, we're definitely going to be sweating to see what happens. Especially if we don't win those first 2 games. Like if we drop one of those games against Brooklyn or Sacramento, I really think this is going to be it's going to be down to the wire. Just like last year when we had to beat Boston. If we hadn't beat Boston, we were going to have to go into Charlotte and beat Charlotte. Something pretty similar to that. The thing that really sucks though, that I mentioned off air, is that we could beat Brooklyn both times, have both teams finish 4-4, and the Magic would still end up as the 8th seed at that point. So,
that is not ideal.
Not at all.
I do not. Let me tell you, Jonathan, I would rather go up against Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam than I would Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't want to play the Greek freak. I don't want any part of it. I'm not scared to admit it. I want no part of that.
We've been saying it for weeks. Anybody but Milwaukee. So Magic just have to. They just got to get it done. We saw
handle your business. Beat the teams you should beat, and if you lose and drop some of those games in the middle, doesn't matter as long as you're just beating the teams you should beat. That would be the Nets, Kings, Pelicans, and that's it. You get the Nets twice. I mean, and steal one from a good team, please. Let's go 5-3.
Obviously, you're looking for a team, and as a team, you're going to be trying to win every single game. But if they just circle like 5 of these games and say Brooklyn, Sacramento, Indiana, we're going to take Toronto, Philadelphia, Boston off, and then try to beat Brooklyn in New Orleans, like that's ideal, right?
And the good news, Jonathan, is that despite us projecting 4-4, those games, especially against the Pacers and Raptors, are very winnable. I would even argue, the Sixers game is winnable.
They're all winnable, in my opinion.
They are all winnable.
I don't see the Clippers. I don't see the Lakers. I don't see Milwaukee on this schedule. So I think we have a fighter's chance in any one of these games.
Right. And then, I'm just giving us an L to Boston because that's Cardiac Kemba.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see Cardiac Kemba in the playoffs. Obviously, if we were talking about the Big East tournament, I'd be like, all right, yes. You are correct, Cardiac Kemba, but let's see him do it in the playoffs. So
I'm sure he wants that shot to do that.
Oh, 100%. And don't get me wrong, I believe he can do it, but I want to see it. I want to see it. I am a Kemba fan. So
right.
All right, I think Luke, you and I talked about next week we're going to take a look at the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference teams, look at some of those schedules and how that all can play out. And then the following week, we'll talk about some Western Conference teams and just kind of look what these playoff pictures are going to look like really over the next 3-4 weeks as we gear up to get into basketball. I cannot wait.
It's going to be fun.
It's going to be fun, man. You got anything else?
I think that's it.
That's it, folks. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Six Man Show. Once again, we're going to keep this going every single Monday. From now throughout the rest of the season and into the off season and next season, the season after that, and just for eternity and at the end of time until Luke and I both die. So anyways, I didn't mean to get morbid to end the show, but thank you guys so much for listening. We will catch you guys next time. See ya.